Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Assemblywoman Backus.
Present.
Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblywoman Hardy. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager. Assemblyman Urick. Chair Marzola.
And I am here. Please mark all the members present as they walk in. Welcome everyone here with us today, especially baby. Here in Carson City, anyone in Las Vegas, and anyone listening to us over the internet. Today, we are going to hear 4 bills: Senate Bill 145, Senate Bill 195, Senate Bill 234, and Senate Bill 290. I am not taking those bills in order. We will also work session a bill today. But before we get started, I have a few housekeeping announcements. Please turn off or silence all your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in by the door. If you have a business card, please make sure to provide one to the committee secretary. If you have handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony today. When testifying, please remember to turn on your microphone and clearly state and spell your name for the record. I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions in this committee, even if we may not agree. And with that, we will start with our first agenda item, which will be our work session. Please take note that work session is to take action on measures the committee has heard previously in our meetings. It is not customary for the committee to take testimony or otherwise rehear a bill during work session. However, I may invite a witness to come forward for clarifications or questions during our committee considerations. And with that, I will open the work session with Senate Bill 275. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 275, revised provisions relating to manufactured home parks. It's sponsored by Senator Daly, heard on May 29th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 275? I don't see any. I will entertain a motion to do pass Senate Bill 275. I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Is there any discussion on this motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Please raise your hands in a nay. I have a nay from Assemblyman Urick, a nay from Assemblywoman Kasama, and a nay from Assemblywoman Hardy. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to myself. And that ends our work session as of right now. We will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 290, which provides for the regulation of employer integrated earned wage access providers and direct-to-consumer earned wage access. Majority Leader, once you get situated, take your time. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Canizaro, and I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley. And I'm pleased to be here with you today to present to you Senate Bill 290, which seeks to regulate and to establish a framework for earned wage access providers, or what we may refer to as EWA providers, and EWA products and services in Nevada. One of the reasons that this is a pertinent conversation relates directly to what we see in so many of our own communities. Many people struggle financially, and as we often discuss, they live paycheck to paycheck. Unfortunately, in 2022, 64% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck, which is up 11 percentage points from 2021, according to a recent Lending Club Blank report. In addition, 47% of those earning more than $100,000 per year reported living paycheck to paycheck, a 13 percentage point increase from a low of 34% in July 2021. 74% of Americans would experience financial difficulty if paychecks were delayed by just 1 week. For Nevadans who are living on a tight budget, everyday events are not always compatible with pay periods. And in this modern age, workers are demanding access to their already earned wages. That is something that we are seeing in our communities, and it's starting to pop up, and this bill seeks to address that with a regulatory framework. As some of you may know, I grew up in a family that we definitely lived paycheck to paycheck. My parents were a bartender and a waitress. And sometimes that meant that when the paycheck was on the way, there wasn't extra money. I have done that myself, even prior to becoming a fully fledged attorney. Had situations where I too was working in the restaurant industry and lived paycheck to paycheck. In that situation, even the smallest life event can cause an issue because you are waiting for that money to come in, and that can be devastating. Sometimes it is a matter of asking your folks for a little bit of money so that you don't bounce checks. And sometimes that could even be something like $5 so I can put it in my account so that the check doesn't bounce. Sometimes it is a matter of digging through the sofa for spare change, and these are the kinds of things that everyday Nevadans face. And that is real when you are living paycheck to paycheck. And for anybody who has ever had to live paycheck to paycheck, you know that something like a flat tire that might cost a few $100 can cause a serious disruption in your life. That could be your transportation to work. That can be your transportation for your kids to get to and from daycare or school. And without that extra money, when you do live on such a tight budget, those become real devastating setbacks for so many Nevada families. As you may know, Earned Wage Access Services provide workers with an opportunity to access their net pay that they have earned to date before the traditional payday, helping them to address financial emergencies or unexpected expenses. This innovative financial service provides a benefit to employees who need immediate access to wages that they have already earned, and I think that that's an important piece for what we are trying to establish with Senate Bill 290. These are wages that employees have gone to work and have earned, and we are simply trying to ensure that they can access those wages for instances where they may need a little bit of cash just to get them through. Earned Wage Access Services began with the development of the gig economy, but this interest has spread to employers and employees in traditional businesses. If there is anything that the COVID pandemic has accelerated, it is the demand of earned wage access in lieu of traditional brick and mortar businesses. For example, 1 in 6 grocery workers now have access to earned wage access services. While earned wage access pay may offer benefits to both employers and employees, there are consumer protections that I think we must consider. In Nevada, we lead on consumer protection. One of our most important roles as legislators is to protect Nevada consumers from unscrupulous and dangerous products and services. We have a long history of thoughtful, balanced financial regulation in this state, and that should continue with these applications as well. And that is why we have introduced Senate Bill 290. This legislation needs the nation in regulating a new promising market alternative that has the power to bring much-needed relief to hardworking Nevadans, particularly in these difficult times of record high inflation. As families are struggling and banks are closing, we need to find safe, secure means for Nevada families to avoid predatory credit finance. Senate Bill 290 authorizes both direct-to-consumer and employer-integrated providers to apply for licensure as an EWA provider through the Department of Business and Industry's Financial Institutions Division. The application process requires EWA providers to disclose consumer protection and data privacy policies, identify fee schedules which must include a no-cost option for EWA users, and otherwise demonstrate to FID that they are competent to obtain a license to provide EWA services to Nevada users. Senate Bill 290 requires licensees to submit annual compliance reports and imposes other rules and policies that will enable FID to assert effective and ongoing regulatory oversight. This objective in this bill is to establish, again, that regulatory framework for these providers and services that holds the service providers accountable, protects consumers, and facilitates the development of an important financial services sector that meets unique needs of Nevada employees and employers alike. We have worked very closely with FID from the very beginning of this process, and we appreciate the agency's time and engagement to develop this bill with stakeholders. We've worked with consumer protection advocates, industry participants, and, of course, FID to ensure that the proposed framework will protect consumers while allowing an innovative financial service industry to thrive in Nevada. Senate Bill 290 includes language that ensures that FID will have the tools it needs to enforce consumer protection provisions, oversee licensed applicants, and otherwise ensure that the playing field for this industry is fair for business and consumers alike. These tools include rigorous background checks and fingerprinting requirements, audited financial statement reporting, annual licensee reporting, and the authority to investigate alleged bad actors, access penalties, and revoke licenses. Senate Bill 290 borrows from applicable existing statutes which FID oversees to replicate proven regulatory oversight language and enforcement provisions. As we continue to develop this language in this bill, we have recently drafted some additional technical language regarding the nationwide multi-state licensing system and included related technical changes that FID has requested, and that will be included in this bill as amended. What I would like to do is turn, Madam Chair, the presentation over to my co-presenters. And I apologize that baby Cole is not enjoying this presentation as much as some others, but I assure you he's okay, and I'm happy to be here with the committee. And of course, once I think we're done presenting, happy to answer any questions, but with your permission, would love to turn the presentation over to my co-presenters.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think baby Cole has been our best presenter yet, even though Commerce and Labor does not excite him.
Hi, everyone. For the record, Alyssa Naveworth on behalf of Daily Pay. I will go ahead and do this section by section of the bill, and then I will turn this over to Ryan Naples, who's from Daily Pay, and Molly Jones, who's from PayActive, two of the industry leaders, and then we'll stand open for questions. Section 1 of the bill identifies the title of NRS as being amended. Title 52 governs trade regulations and practices. Sections 2 through 11 identify key EWA definitions. Sections 2 through 15 define key terms and concepts that are essential to understanding EWA services and that distinguish EWA services from other types of financial products. Notable definitions include Section 4, which defines earned but unpaid income to mean salary, wages, or other compensation that an employee has already earned but has not been paid to the employee. This definition is key to distinguishing EWA products from loans and other lending-related financial products and services. Sections 3 and 7 define two primary types of EWA models: direct-to-consumer. EWA services is a type of product that does not rely on employer-provided wage and income data. Section 8 defines employer-integrated EWA services as a type of product that relies on employer-provided wage and attendance data. Section 9.2 defines the types of fees that the licensed EWA providers may assess to provide EWA services to a user. Section 10.5 defines proceeds as the payment of earned but unpaid income. Section 10.6 defines the providers in the space. Section 12 is a critical section. It's the requirements to obtain a license to provide EWA services. Section 12 makes it clear that any entity must obtain a license from FID to provide EWA services in Nevada. They must disclose their terms and conditions to do so, must offer a zero-cost EWA option, must abide by federal ACH rules. They must provide sufficient data and privacy and protection policies. They must disclose the fee schedule. An applicant must identify whether it operates as a direct-to-consumer or employer-integrated EWA provider. And that Section 12 also clarifies that FID has the discretion to modify the application requirements through the rulemaking process. Section 13, any additional application criteria. This covers all of the fingerprinting and background checks necessary to become a licensed EWA provider in the state of Nevada. Section 13 ensures that businesses that apply for an EWA provider license do not have any history of consumer protection violations or misconduct in other states. EWA license applicants are required to disclose any instances of making false statements, prior license revocations, and any instances of fraud or other material misconduct. Section 16 through 17 imposes standard bonding requirements. Sections 18 through 24 gives the FID critical regulatory tools and oversight. This gives them the ability to audit and investigate EWA licensees, investigatory hearings, audits and investigations and administrative hearings, and the ability to suspend or revoke a license if probable cause exists to show that a licensee has violated the EWA rules of Nevada. Section 25 governs consumer complaints. It authorizes an EWA user or any other consumer to file an administrative complaint with FID if it's believed that EWA rules have been violated. Section 28 requires annual regulatory reporting of FID. This requires providers to submit annual reports to FID. EWA providers must report audited financial statements and a copy of any complaints filed against such a provider. Section 31 covers consumer protection rules and practices, outlines affirmative requirements. It says that EWA providers must enact consumer complaint policies that are uniform and approved by FID. EWA providers must clearly disclose terms, fees, and conditions to users and must allow EWA users to cancel a subscription at any time and at no cost to the user. EWA providers must comply with all privacy and data protection laws. EWA providers that allow users to pay tips or gratuities must provide certain disclosures to users concerning the use of those funds. EWA providers must not accept payment of fees from a user via a credit card and may not require a user's credit report or credit score to determine eligibility for EWA services. Section 31 further clarifies that EWA providers must not charge late fees, interest, or any other penalty or charge for users' failure to pay outstanding fees. EWA providers may not file suit against users or collect outstanding fees. These non-recourse aspects of EWA regulation are an important consumer protection feature that distinguishes EWA products from other predatory and high-interest financial products and loans. Section 32 allows FID to adopt administrative rules and regulations. Sections 33 through 35 importantly distinguish EWA services and products from loans and other financial products. It clarifies that EWA providers are not lenders and that EWA products are not loans. And finally, Section 37 establishes important effective dates, including the time in which FID must commence the regulatory and administrative rulemaking process, and also allowing existing EWA providers who are operating under an MOU or other temporary arrangement with FID to continue to operate while that process is established. It also establishes an automatic sunset date that requires the legislature to revisit EWA statutes and determine the future if it wishes to extend or revise the EWA rules that SB 290 propose. And with that, I will turn the presentation to Ryan Naples from Daily Pay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ryan Naples from Daily Pay. So good afternoon. I'm from Daily Pay, and we're one of several EWA providers in Nevada. And as an industry, I am joined this afternoon by, among others, Molly Jones from PayActive in person, and remotely by Yvonne Chow from Earnin and Garth McAdams from Zayzoon, who you'll be hearing from later. Together, we are testifying in support of SB 290. As of today, more than 100,000 employees in Nevada have used our products, and over 600 in-state businesses have offered EWA to their workers. EWA is popular with businesses because it reduces employee turnover, absenteeism, and the time to fill open jobs. It's popular with employees because Americans today expect life on demand. In addition, as you've heard, 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and bills and emergencies do not wait for an employer to run payroll. EWA companies solve for these disconnects by facilitating access to already earned wages, not future wages, for either no fee or a very low fee. We keep people from needing to take on debt. While each EWA company is slightly different, we all share a few key characteristics. First, all EWA is based on wages earned. Workers can only access their own money they've already worked for. We are not providing credit. Because our product is not a loan, no EWA provider charges interest or late fees. All EWA products are also non-recourse. If an employer fails to make payroll, the risk is on the EWA provider, not the worker. There's also no requirement to repay, no collection activity, and no credit bureau reporting for non-payment. While there are usually some small costs associated with EWA, at least one no-cost option is offered by most EWA providers, such as through a debit card or next business day ACH bank transfer. A nominal processing fee of about $3 for instant delivery to any bank account is also common. Without EWA, available options to access funds quickly can also be very costly, especially without good credit. They typically include overdrawing a bank account for a $29 fee, a pawn loans $150 fee, or $500 payday loans $924 fee over 4 months. In 2021, Daily Pay commissioned independent research that showed how 95% of our users previously reliant on payday loans no longer use them after gaining access to EWA. This resulted in savings of between $630 and $930 per year per user, and the results were equally positive for frequent overdrafters. Independent research commissioned in 2022 corroborated these findings as well. Since EWA is not credit, our industry conducts no underwriting and does not base its low transaction fees or access to wages on creditworthiness. We also do not charge these low fees in installments. For these reasons, an APR rate, which would be misleadingly high even with our low fees, are incongruous to how EWA is structured. These rates, therefore, do not represent the actual cost and potential savings available to EWA users. Similarly, compared to our industry's best practices, Nevada's current lending law permits more fees, debt collection, and other activities that could harm a consumer's credit score and overall financial health. For these reasons, designating EWA as a consumer loan or credit would bring the very same detrimental debt product practices that EWA is designed to help employees escape. EWA is best regulated as a separate and distinct financial product, which helps free workers from cycles of debt and not get trapped in these same cycles. Since 2021, the EWA industry has worked with a broad coalition in Nevada in order to finalize the bill before you today. We are especially grateful for the hard work of the Nevada Legal Aid Society and the State Financial Institutions Division for collaborating with us in this legislation, which includes strong, first-in-the-nation consumer protections, specifically tailored for EWA that ultimately represents a compromise bill that all parties can support. The EWA industry and Daily Pay are supportive of SB 290 for these reasons, and on behalf of both, I want to thank you all for your time. I would be also happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Molly Jones, and I'm the Vice President of Government Relations at PayActive, which is an employer-integrated EWA provider. Thank you, Senate Majority Leader Canizaro, and congratulations on baby Cole. This is by far the most adorable panel I've ever been on. Thank you as well to Senate Deputy Leader Lang, Assembly Majority Leader Huggety, for your leadership on this issue. It's nice to be back in Carson City, and I want to thank you all for how accessible you have been on this issue and for your engagement in learning about it as well. On SB 290, we have appreciated the opportunity to work extensively with many stakeholders on this bill, including legal aid, for constructively engaging in these discussions. Over half of Nevada workers live paycheck to paycheck, and even more lack an emergency fund to weather a financial shock, like a medical bill or a car repair. This can be devastating to workers and their families. By enabling workers to access their own already earned wages at little or no cost, EWA provides a critical lifeline for these thousands of Nevadans. There are several characteristics of EWA that make it a responsible alternative to high-cost credit products. It is non-recourse. It has no impact on a consumer's credit score. It comes with no inability to pay risk. There is no interest, no late fees or penalties. It has free and low-cost options for the user. It uses verified payroll data, and it is safe and trusted by employers. Without EWA, workers would have to turn to high-cost credit products like payday loans, title loans, pawn loans, and credit card debt. The Pew Charitable Trust, a think tank, estimates that it costs Nevadans $924 in fees to borrow just $500 over 4 months through a payday loan. In contrast, employees have multiple free options to access $500 of their earned wages, or they can pay an optional flat fee of $299 for expedited delivery. So that's $924 for a payday loan, or a maximum of $299 for EWA. It is clear that EWA is a responsible alternative for Nevada workers. This bill creates a number of strong consumer protections that don't exist today, including protections for models that cause overdraft, numerous safeguards not contemplated in existing credit laws, and many limits on fees. It bans all mandatory fees, interest, and late fees, and it requires providers to offer a free option for consumers to access their wages. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We are glad to support this gold standard bill, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Does that conclude the presentation?
Alyssa Naveworth on behalf of Daily Pay, for the record, yes, it does. We are open to any and all questions. I look forward to them.
Thank you. And we will start with Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. You read my mind. And I appreciate, I met with most of you in the months before session to discuss this bill, which I think is a great idea. So I just had a couple of clarifying things. So as you stated, this is income they've earned or accrued. Is there a certain amount, hours or dollar-wise, that they have to have before they can access it, an employee?
So Ryan Naples on behalf of Daily Pay. So thank you for the question. To you, Madam Chair. Oh, to you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair.
You can go direct.
Thank you. Okay, apologies. Through you, Madam Chair. Okay, thank the way every company is set up a little bit differently. The way our company is set up is our system uploads several times a day, and an employee who chooses, because it's entirely voluntary, they can look on their phone throughout the day while they're working to see how much they're earning, and then they're able to take access if they choose when their shift is over or the day is over. So it's not an amount that they need to be able to earn up to. It's that the day has to be over. But again, it is entirely mandatory, voluntary, not mandatory. So, and I believe it's 4 times a day that our system uploads with time and attendance and payroll data.
Thank you. And that was my other question, just to confirm that this is voluntary by the employee. And what was the other thing? Now I lost my train of thought. It's not a loan from the employer. This is money they've earned. It's their own money. You can just verify those 2 things.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Assemblywoman. Sorry, I threw myself off this time.
And you can go direct.
Alyssa Naveworth, thank you so much. Alyssa Naveworth, for the record, on behalf of Daily Pay. One, yes, correct. It's 100% voluntary. In fact, the majority of employees don't necessarily access this. And also folks that access the particular application don't necessarily access their own wages. They're just learning real time how their wage summary actually works as a financial tool. And 2, it is absolutely not a loan, which is why we are here. It was determined that under the existing loan statutes in Nevada that this model did not fit, and therefore we needed a necessary regulatory model. There's lots of reasons why this doesn't necessarily match up to loan, but the fact that this is not credit, it's your already earned wages, and there is no recourse, all signals why we need SB 290 to create a regulatory structure that governs this new financial product.
We will go to Assemblyman Yurek.
Thank you, Chair. And like my colleague, I want to thank you all for taking the time in the months leading up to actually arriving here in session to meet with us, to explain this concept. I think it is an amazing concept and a way to leverage technology to give individuals, particularly individuals who, as you indicate, are living paycheck to paycheck, to give them quick, ready access to their money and save them from what we know are some very harming and damaging predatory lending practices. So I love the concept. And I realize this is a policy committee, and I do have just a finance question. And really it's, I think, to kind of ease people even within my own party sometimes, because as you're aware, taxes and all of that becomes a big deal. And I know that when we had discussed this, we had talked about the licensure and the fees that are going to be associated or imposed by FID for the licensing. I just want to make sure and confirm and get on record that the industry is okay with this level of licensing fees, that y'all feel comfortable with that. And once again, thank you for taking the time to explain this and bring this bill.
Thank you, Assemblyman Yurick, for the question. For the record, my name is Molly Jones with Pay Active. That is correct. This bill creates a licensing system for EWA providers. It costs $500 for providers to obtain this license through FID. As providers, we believe this licensing fee is fair, and we support paying that fee. We view this as a cost of doing business and would not pass on that cost to Nevada consumers. Yep.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any, but I do want to say thank you for bringing this bill forward. As someone who raised her son as a single mom, putting herself through school, I was that person who lived paycheck to paycheck, didn't know how I was going to pay things at times. And so I appreciate you bringing this bill forward without fees, without a recourse, without, late fees. And so thank you for that, because I think it gives individuals, customers, an opportunity to get back on their feet, to pay certain things and not have their power cut off and things like that. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your presentation today, and we will start with support testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? And please take your time. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. Each person has 2 minutes. And you may begin when you're ready.
There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Jerron Levi. I'm SVP and Head of Government Affairs for the American FinTech Council. AFC is a national trade association in Washington that represents non-banks and banks and a variety of business models, providing a range of financial products and services, including earned wage access. What distinguishes AFC as a trade, though, is the high bar we set for our members around consumer protection and the trade support for regulation that facilitates responsible innovation. The trade's advocacy really reflects the members' commitment to fair, transparent, and responsible financial services. At the outset, I want to say that as a former state delegate myself from the great state of Maryland, that spent 15 years in the labor movement and a number of years advocating for strong consumer protections in housing and financial services, I fully appreciate your side of the dais and the balance that you are trying to strike. Your task is both to ensure strong consumer protections around earned wage access and products, and also facilitate a competitive financial marketplace that provides what I call the 3 A's. Availability of financial products and services, accessibility to a diversity of consumers across the credit risk spectrum and that may be underserved, as well as affordability. Earned wage access meets those 3 A's in my view, and importantly provides a needed and affordable alternative to high-cost credit and debt options in the marketplace. AFC fully supports the state setting standards and parameters for responsible providers and responsible use of this product, and that honors key features and principles. Access to wages based on employer payroll, earned income data, non-recourse for the worker, free options and cost transparency, and importantly, clarification that EWA is not a loan or credit product. That's key. Unlike credit, EWA is, you've heard quite a bit,
Ma'am, and can you wrap up your testimony, please?
Okay, requires no credit check, doesn't incur late fees or penalties, is non-recourse, and doesn't affect the credit scores. On behalf of AFC, I urge you to support Senate Bill 290. Allowing workers to access their wages early is an option that Nevada consumers deserve. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Moratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of SB 290. As you've heard it through the bill presentation, this will allow employers greater flexibility to access their earned wages, and that's why the Chamber is in support of this. This will allow them to provide access to will allow them to access their wages, and that means they will not have to access other services that may not be based on this, but rather on loans and so forth. And I think that's an important component. The Chamber supports this bill because it's not a loan. It's earning and accessing your own wages. I think that's important for Nevada's employees. And as you heard from the bill presentation, also, this bill will also have consumer protections in place, regulatory components, enforcement, and it will be regulated by the state of Nevada that our employees, our members, will have confidence in. And we thank the Senate Majority Leader for the work she's doing on behalf of Nevada's families and employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 290? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 290, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 204, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Garth McAdam, and I am from Zayzoon. Zayzoon partners with payroll providers and employers to provide earned wage access service, financial literacy tools, and other resources to workers in Nevada. We mainly work with small to mid-sized businesses, and some of our employer partners have as few as 10 employees. Because of this, and the fact that we are smaller than some of the other providers that have spoken today, we believe that we have an additional perspective to offer on Senate Bill 290, and we are here to express our support for this bill. We believe that this bill provides important consumer protections and provides essential operating clarity for industry participants. There was a question about the cost of the license, and as a smaller provider, we would also like to agree that this fee is both manageable and reasonable. As you consider this bill, please keep in mind how important EWA is as an alternative to other products. I've rounded the following numbers just to save some time, but we've also submitted a letter that provides this in greater detail. You've heard mention about the $924 for payday loans. The average overdraft fee and NSF fee are just under $30, and the daily limit on those fees can be as high as $300. In contrast, earned wage access fees range on average from about $2.50 to $6. They can be free depending on how it's accessed as well. Earned wage access is a new financial product, and it's often easiest to mentally categorize these products based on pre-existing ones. I would encourage this committee to view earned wage access as simply analogous to an ATM withdrawal, where the average out-of-cost network fee is simply $4.66. This is very much in line with the cost of earned wage access. We have actual data from our customers that shows how access to our services has reduced their use of both payday loans and overdrafts in a measurable and significant way. This data clearly shows that there is a positive impact on the finances of Nevada workers who are given access to earned wage access. Please see your submitted letter, again, for more details on this. SB 290 will ensure that responsible earned wage access will continue to be available to workers in Nevada. Thank you all very much for your time today and for your consideration of this important bill.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, and to the distinguished members of the committee. My name is Corey Marshall. That's spelled Kouri, Marshall, Marshall, and I serve as the Director for State and Local Public Policy for the Chamber of Progress. Our corporate partners include leading fintech companies, but our partners do not have a vote or a veto over our positions. We support SB 290, a bill that will regulate earned wage access services that help workers bridge the gap until payday. This frees workers from dependency on the payroll cycle and alternative options like predatory lending practices. The proper regulation of EWA services can be a benefit to Nevadans, where the FINRA Foundation reports that 56% of Nevadans are living paycheck to paycheck. Customer research conducted by leading EWA providers in 2021 showed that this service is mostly used to pay bills on time, buy groceries, and to avoid late fees. 8 out of 10 EWA consumers feel these services are the best available options to manage their spending and say their life has significantly improved after utilizing these services. From 2018 up until now, EWA services tripled in usage, primarily in response to consumers adapting to a financial environment where they have household expenses that cannot wait until payday. From single parents to 9-to-5 workers, EWA has been and will continue to be a valuable option that works for their families and budgets. We commend the senators for introducing this legislation, which puts guardrails around EWA by establishing clear regulations for service providers. We respectfully request your support for SB 290. Thank you all for your time.
Hello, Chair Mazzola. I'm Pete Iceberg. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at ADP. ADP is among the nation's largest payroll service providers, paying roughly 1 out of every 6 workers in the United States. We work with firms like Daily Pay, PayActive, and others to facilitate the technical connections to employer payroll and timekeeping systems to enable direct verification of wage amounts that have been earned to date. EWA is a simple and limited alternative to address occasional spending needs without resorting to payday loans or asking an employer or friends and family for help. We view earned wage access as a major financial wellness improvement for the roughly 40% of workers who live paycheck to paycheck and don't have a cushion of savings to draw from in an emergency. We are strong supporters and proponents of SB 290, which would recognize EWA in state law and set up appropriate registration and consumer safeguards. Employers like EWA because it's easy to administer, does not affect an employer's normal payroll processes, and reduces employee stress and turnover. Employees increasingly look for employers that offer this new feature. Many employers, however, don't offer EWA today because they are worried about regulatory uncertainty. Their workers would really benefit from EWA. We urge the committee to approve the bill.
Hello, this is Alice Jacobson. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Payroll.org. That's formerly the American Payroll Association. My last name is spelled Jacobson. Payroll.org is a nonprofit association. We represent payroll professionals.
Are you still there?
Yes.
You cut out
Sorry,
for
can
a
you
moment.
not hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. So Payroll.org supports Nevada Bill SB 290. The bill will enable employers to offer earned wage access benefits to their employees as a means of promoting financial wellness that is both inexpensive and an efficient alternative to payday lending and bank overdraft fees. Payroll.org supports the bill because it would establish a reasonable approach to employer and employee protections while leaving options open to employer selection of vendors. By regulating these services as a non-credit option, the Nevada Legislature will keep program costs low. The bill also provides transparency and appropriate oversight. Thank you.
Distinguished members of the committee, thank you for having me here today and apologies for not being able to make it in person. My name is Yvonne Chow, spelled Yvonnechao, and I'm testifying in support of SB 290 on behalf of EarnIn. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Senator Canizaro for her work on SB 290 and Vice Chair Hadagi and Senator Lang for being steady champions of earned wage access known as EWA, understanding the vital role EWA plays for the tens of thousands of Nevadan workers. EWA gives people access to their wages after they've already worked. People are not more dependent on earned wage access than they are on their paychecks. The way EWA products are designed, consumers have flexibility and control unheard of in financial services. EWA products do not have finance charges, interest, impact on credit, delinquency fees, and providers do not have the right to sue customers. Most importantly, in the day-to-day, there is a zero-cost option available for those who need it without limit. Unlike credit products, EWA looks at what you've already earned, not future income or ability to pay back based on credit scores. I said this on the Senate side, and I'll reiterate again that this is not just a company pitch, but realized impact. Since earnings launch in 2014, over 43,000 Nevadan workers have utilized EWA, with 19,000 being in the last year alone. In a 2021 study across the customers of 3 companies, 87% said that EWA helped them to take better care of themselves and their families, and 44% said that without EWA, they would consider not paying certain bills on time. Earnin truly sees ourselves as consumer advocates who are actively finding better solutions for consumers with their input along the way. Consumer advocates can come in all forms, and no one should have a monopoly on the consumer's voice. At Earnin, for-profit does not mean for-profit at the expense of consumers. By supporting this bill, you will be providing Nevadan workers with predictable and affordable alternatives to overdrafts and other high-cost products with harmful terms. I urge you to support this bill today. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to opposition testimony to Senate Bill 290. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 290, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, Jonathan Norman, on behalf of the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. I'd like to thank the stakeholders, the majority leader, Majority Floor Leader Hadagi, and Senator Lang. We were involved in a lot of discussions about this product. As you can imagine, representing consumers, we would be extremely skeptical of a new tool in this area. At the end of the day, we're very comfortable with the consumer protections in this bill. We believe the non-recourse nature, FID's oversight, and the sunset, so that if this product doesn't work for Nevadans, we can revisit it in 2029. That date was put in there because it was the date FID was certain that they could do a review of each one of the providers. So they were comfortable with it, so were we. So with that, I think it does warrant thinking about the alternatives consumers have in our state, right? And everything we've heard about payday lenders, I think everybody in this room can agree that they are a terrible predatory business. And so I do believe that this product offers an alternative that will save Nevadans a lot of money in the long run. And maybe in 2025, we can have legislation to limit payday lenders. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? I don't see any. I see someone in Las Vegas. Are you wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 290? You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Sandy O'Loughlin from the Commissioner for FID. Here in neutral position, we have worked extensively with the sponsors and with the stakeholders, and I'm just here for any questions.
Committee members, are there any questions? I don't think there's any questions. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for being here today. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in neutral for Senate Bill 290, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Senator, would you like to give any closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6, and now that my guest has settled down a little bit, which I apologize and hope was not too distracting to the committee. I just want to thank you for your time and attention to hearing this matter. I want to thank the Majority Leader for her work on this bill as well. As you can see, this has been a collaborative process and a bill that has taken a lot of work to get to a point where I think it is both going to serve our constituents in offering the ability for them to access, again, wages that they have earned. They just haven't gotten that paycheck just yet. Which can help with so many, critical needs that can arise in everyday life, especially for those who really are just making it day by day and might not have somebody to call to get them to lend that person, $100 for a flat tire, or might not have somebody who can give them $20 to put into a checking account so that something doesn't bounce and then they're looking at fees from the bank and so on and so forth. And so I do think that this is a real solution for our constituents. I am really grateful to all of the industry for coming to the table and being willing to work out a solution that allows them to get licensed so we can ensure that consumer protections are in place and that will allow for them to operate in a way that makes sense. And again, I just want to thank the Financial Institutions Division for being part of that conversation and legal aid as well to make sure that I think we struck a good balance with this policy. And I think you see that reflected in the testimony that has come before this committee today and how far we have come with this bill. So I thank you very much for your time and appreciate your indulgence as I come here to present the bill. And luckily this guy managed to fall asleep. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for your presentation. I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 290. Majority Leader, please don't leave quite yet. We are going at this time to work session Senate Bill 290. Committee members, are there any questions before we work session this bill? I don't see any. I will entertain a motion to do pass of Senate Bill 290. There was an amendment.
Okay, so moved.
Yeah. I have a first from Vice Chair Howdiggy, a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Carter. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 195, which revises provisions relating to cannabis. Senator Nguyen, welcome, and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. For the record, I'm Rochelle Nguyen, and I represent Senate District 3. It is my honor here to be here and present Senate Bill 195. I'm also joined here today by Lake Martin, who's the Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Association and also a professor of cannabis policy at UNLV. In the 2019 session, the legislature created the Cannabis Compliance Board with the passage of Assembly Bill 533. The Cannabis Compliance Board, which is also called the CCB, began regulating the cannabis industry on July 1st, 2020. Since that time, the CCB was created, there have been successes and there have been quite a few growing pains. Last year, the cannabis business and the Nevada Cannabis Association reached out to me in seeking help to address some of those growing problems. If we talk about personal story, my origin story for this particular bill actually came from one of my neighbors who is involved in the cannabis industry. And I went with one of your assembly members, Assemblyman Watts, and we went to tour her facility. And at the time, there was a time and effort billing audit that was taking place. And so we got to see in real time some of the real issues that I'm going to speak about and what the goal of SB 195 is intended to solve. The goal of Senate Bill 195 is to support the growth and stability of this new industry while continuing to ensure public safety. The cannabis industry employs about 18,000 Nevadans, and in the past 2 years has sent more than $300 million to the state education fund. I know you hear probably from a lot of your constituents some misinformation about where the cannabis money goes and whether or not it goes to education. And I will tell you that with some corrections that we've done in this growing industry, I can assure you, sitting on the money committees, as many of you have that also sit on those committees, have seen that the impact of the licensed cannabis industry has been tremendous. There's a report that is currently available on Nellis, and it estimates that the licensed cannabis industry has an economic impact on Nevada of about $2 billion annually. And while the industry has grown steadily since 2017, Nevada is now seeing a decline in sales. In fiscal year 2022, they were down 4% from 2021, and this year licensed cannabis sales are down as much as 20% month over month compared to the previous year. This bill encourages cooperation between regulators and industry like we see in gaming, and it does so by incentivizing and rewarding compliance and adding transparency and consistency to the disciplinary process for licensees. And it also helps reduce excessive fees that are threatening the sustainability of licensed cannabis businesses. Not only are these fines and fees a threat to the existing industry, but they will create significant challenges for entrepreneurs trying to open up licensed cannabis businesses in Nevada. There's a couple of things that I'm going to give some examples, and I know that when Ms. Martin goes through the bill and talks about some of these things, she'll give some examples, and there might be even some testimony that can give some real-life examples about what we're talking about here. Some people have had the opportunity, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to do this. I'm not a huge cannabis not the face of cannabis by any stretch of the imagination, but I am interested in smart business policies. I'm interested in public safety. I'm interested in making sure that if we have a lawful industry, that it is something that is run like we would run and we would regulate other businesses, taking into consideration some of the unique challenges that the cannabis industry has. And this bill, Senate Bill 195, is a reflection of that. There were certain things that hopefully you will see that what this bill also seeks to accomplish is a sense of fairness, a sense of accountability, not only within the industry, but those that are seeking to regulate the industry. I don't want this to be seen as like a bill where we're trying to upend some of the policies that the Cannabis Compliance Board have put into effect. I don't see him in here today, but I know that Speaker Yeager was instrumental in creating this regulatory agency. And even if you talk to him, and I'm putting words in his mouth right now, but I think he understands and he's been very supportive of some of these changes, because just like when you have a new industry, we realize that we can't do it exactly like we've done everything else. In particular, we used what we knew and what we did well here, which was the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Control Commission, and we tried to replicate that. And what we've learned over the past couple years as we've been trying to perfect this is the cannabis industry is different than that industry. And so we need to make those adjustments, and this is an example of one of those adjustments that brings some more fairness and equity to the process. So with that, I will turn this over to Ms. Lake Martin, the Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Association, to walk you through some of the sections of the bill.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. For the record, I'm Lake Martin, Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Association. The NCA is the trade association for licensed cannabis businesses in Nevada. We want to extend our appreciation to Senator Wynn and the sponsors and many co-sponsors of this bill who've been so receptive to business owners who reached out asking for help. With Senator Wynn's help, we worked to craft this bill, which has broad support from the industry and which is directly targeted to addressing some of the challenges that we've been facing in the cannabis industry here in Nevada. So I'll now walk through the sections of the bill. Section 2 authorizes the CCB to resolve disciplinary complaints through a settlement agreement, which codifies existing practice. Subsection 2 states that in reviewing settlements, the board shall consider certain mitigating factors. Section 3 spells out those mitigating factors and requires the board to state on the record which mitigating factors are present and what weight the board will give those factors. One of the policy goals of this bill is to encourage self-reporting. Self-reporting is where a licensee discovers a violation and reports it directly to the CCB. Encouraging self-reporting is a key part of the oversight of other regulated industries. It increases public safety, conserves the state resources, and incentivizes compliance. Section 3 also establishes other mitigating circumstances, where the licensee has submitted a plan of correction and taken action to correct the violation, where the licensee has made a good faith effort to prevent violations from occurring, where the licensee cooperates in the investigation, and any other mitigating factors established by the board and regulation. Section 3, subsection 2 requires the CCB to take action to approve or reject a licensee's proposed plan of correction within 30 days, or else the plan is deemed approved. Plans of correction are existing tools that are used for compliance and correcting issues, and this is just ensuring that licensees receive a response to their proposed plan so that they can move forward. Section 4 again authorizes the board to settle disciplinary complaints. It also requires the board to consider mitigating factors when making a determination of a civil penalty outside of a settlement agreement. In other words, if the complaint went to a hearing and the board or a hearing officer recommended a civil penalty, then the board shall still consider mitigating factors when imposing any fine. Section 5 addresses the practice of violation stacking. Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulation 4 sets out a system of progressive discipline. With the exception of the most serious violations involving public safety, the system is set up so that the first violation gives rise to a warning, and then if the matter hasn't been corrected or occurs again, the licensee would incur fines at an increasing amount, as well as the possible suspension or revocation. But the CCB's practice over the past 2 years has been to stack violations to charge licensees with multiple violations arising from the same occurrence. For example, once a cannabis plant in cultivation reaches 8 inches tall, it must be tagged with a metric label. If a CCB inspector enters the building and finds 100 plants that are 9 inches tall that aren't properly tagged, then the practice has been the licensee would charge with 100 violations. This practice is contrary to the intent of the progressive discipline system, which is designed to give a warning or a smaller fine and educate the licensee that the practice or the mistake is non-compliant. The stacking of violations also increases the amount of fines that could lead to suspension or revocation. The goal of this section is to get to a place where we're utilizing the progressive discipline system as it's intended and designed to educate, correct behavior, and incentivize future compliance. Section 6 reiterates the language of Section 4 that the board must consider mitigating factors as part of determining civil penalties. Section 7 would define the maximum civil penalty for a violation as $20,000. Nevada currently has one of the highest maximum per violation penalties in the entire country. So most states have a cap at $50,000 or below per violation, and we're currently at $90,000 per violation. Section 7 also clarifies existing language regarding what the CCB can do in response to a violation, including issuing a penalty, suspension, revocation, or issuing a warning or no penalty if warranted under the circumstances. Section 8 and 9 were deleted by amendment. Section 9.5 was added by amendment and reflects a compromise between the industry and the CCB, which I'll skip that section for now and put it in context when we discuss the rest of Section 11. Section 10 describes the current practice of transferring ownership interests. This would allow the board to adopt regulations regarding the transfer of ownership interests, which is something that they have already done. Section 11 allows the board to collect from licensees the actual costs paid to third parties for any background checks performed in connection with the initial applications or transfers of ownership. Actual costs had not been previously defined in statute, and that term was interpreted very broadly. Section 11, subsection 6 would prohibit the current practice of time and effort billing. Time and effort billing is the CCB's practice of charging licensees at an hourly rate for CCB staff time. It is not authorized by statute. It is essentially double billing licensees for the CCB's overhead costs. The double billing occurs because the agency is already fully funded by the wholesale excise tax. So I want to share with you a story that illustrates the impact of time and effort billing on these small businesses. Quanine and Steve Cantwell own a farm in Pahrump where they grow organic cannabis. They also grow organic produce, which they sell at farmers markets. After many years of operation without compliance issues, during a routine inspection in October of 2021, CCB inspectors questioned the organic growing practices that are at the heart of their firm. That one inspection has led to the CCB billing the Cantwells for more than $47,000 for the CCB's staff time and effort. The Cantwells have not received a complaint or any discipline. The Quanine Cantwell also submitted her testimony in writing, and that's available on Nellis. The CCB bills licensees for inspections, audits, travel time, reviewing security footage, even communicating with licensees to resolve a compliance issue. So if you're a licensee and you have a meeting with the CCB about an issue, you'll get a bill from the CCB for staff's hourly rate at $111 per hour. It doesn't matter if the staff person is brand new, they're still billed out at the rate of $111 per hour. If there are 3 CCB staff members at the meeting, you'll get a bill for $333, the hourly rate for all 3 people. It's impossible for licensees to budget for these expenses and challenging to control costs. There's no caps on these bills. There's no fee schedule. There's no appeal process. You have to pay or your license won't be renewed. There's at least one licensee on a payment plan because they can't keep up with the CCB's bills. What's unique about the CCB is that unlike other regulatory agencies, the CCB's entire operating budget is covered by the wholesale excise tax. The CCB does not get its funding from the general fund. It's fully funded by that 15% wholesale excise tax on cannabis products. And the $63 million that's brought in annually in that wholesale excise tax is more than 6 times the CCB's operating budget. So they don't need to generate revenue through these additional fees, nor does the statute direct them to do so. So this practice has a direct negative impact on every current and future licensed cannabis business's ability to succeed. Licensees are sending tens of thousands of dollars to the CCB every month instead of putting those funds into growing their businesses and hiring employees. This bill would put an end to that practice. We've had many discussions with the CCB about this bill through the legislative session, and as part of those discussions, we did reach an agreement to make a narrow carve-out to the elimination of time and effort billing. And I want to thank the CCB staff for working with us on the amendment, which has been adopted, and that's also part of Section 11. So specifically, if there's a new license application, a transfer of interest, a request for approval of management services agreement, or a request for waiver, the CCB's investigations division will be permitted to bill the applicant for reasonable costs. So the reason we carved out this narrow exception is it's similar to how gaming bills applicants for background investigations. If an applicant is coming to Nevada with complex financials or a multi-state or foreign company, this will allow the CC to bill those applicants for the reasonable costs associated with investigating them and determining their suitability to do business in Nevada. However, this will not allow the CCB to continue the practice of billing licensees for routine staff activities such as inspections, audits, research, meetings, answering compliance questions, et cetera. So for these application-driven investigations, the CCB must, according to the amendment, provide an estimate in advance of what they believe those costs will be, which typically ranges from $3,000 to $12,000. The applicant can request documentation and can appeal the final bill if it ends up exceeding the estimate by more than 25%. As I referenced, Section 9.5 sets up this structure for application-driven investigations and directs the board to adopt regulations to effectuate this process, as specifically set forth in statute. Section 12 makes renumbering changes, and Section 13 makes the bill effective upon passage and approval.
And just to highlight some of the things, for me, this came down to accountability and responsibility and equity. When we talk about the self-reporting piece, to give a more, just an example, and this is something I know there's lots of lawyers on this board, and there's lots of people that have been involved in business, and there are a lot of teachers on this board, and there are people that have dealt with progressive discipline and other things like that in self-reporting. And there are a lot of parents on this board that have also had to discipline their kids. So I think of it this way. Under the current model, if you are a business and you are caught during an audit and you have like mislabeled pre-rolls, and let's say you have 5 of them, that would be a stacking charges of 5 mislabeled pre-rolls, and they would have a set, set penalty and punishment. Now, if you were that same business and as a course of your own internal audits, you realized that you had mislabeled these 5 pre-rolls and you contacted the CCB on your own and you self-reported, I had these 5 mislabeled pre-rolls. This is what we've done to correct it. This is what happened. This is why it won't happen in the future. These are the protective measures that we've done to mitigate this in the future. You will have the same exact violation as someone who didn't self-report and was caught. And I don't think that's any kind of behavior that we want to encourage. As far as the stacking of violations, we heard some during the Senate testimony that there were not only the examples that Ms. Martin gave around having 100 plants that are 9 inches tall as opposed to 8 inches tall, but there were certain types of violations that would be stacked that really didn't have a whole lot to do with the safety of the cannabis. If there were missing paper towels or they ran out of paper towels in one of the bathrooms, it amounted to a $40,000 fine in that circumstance for that cannabis industry. That yes, we do want to encourage people to wash their hands, obviously, and dry them. But the idea that the fine amount elevated because of stacking provisions to a $40,000 fine for that is a policy that I don't think we should support as a state, and that would be corrected in this. I think the example from the Pahrump business that is again available on Nellis, and I would encourage you to read and reach out to this this family-owned business, to be quite honest, is a really good example. They were, growing other vegetables, and they were growing organically, and they had a unique model. And if you have the opportunity, I would encourage you to all go out and tour this during the interim. As well as some of these other industries. It's amazing what they're doing as far as like the technology and tracking and growing. And it's a weird mix of regulatory stuff and our agriculture. And so it's really quite fascinating. But in that situation, there was $47,000 worth of time and effort billing and not a single complaint or discipline related to that. And again, that is you are beholden to the number of people that come and how long it takes them to do it. And there is just no way for these businesses to be able to comply with this. So those are just some examples I wanted to highlight again, but we are available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your presentation today. We will start with Assemblyman Yurek.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and for being willing to answer some of our questions. I will confess, as a prior law enforcement officer for 20 years, I've probably been a little slow to come along with what's been happening in the cannabis industry, but my eyes have been opened, and I've opened up my brain to kind of understand this stuff better. And I certainly appreciate the value of self-reporting, people trying to regulate themselves and not deterring that through excessive fines and all of that, and progressive sanctioning and discipline. I love it. I think that's very, very important. I think that's logical. But when I read the bill, something struck me, and I want to see if you could just address it. And Senator, you kind of alluded to it, and it's really the combined effect of Section 5, page line 29, or page 529, or I'm sorry, Section 5, page 5, line 29, where we're combining the violations that are close in time, place, and circumstance that are discovered in one audit or investigation into that single violation. But at the same time, in Section 7 on page 7, line 27, we're limiting the penalty for a single violation to this $20,000. And so I guess my question is, or what I'd like to get assurances from you, because I'm not real well versed in all of the issues, is there a potential dilution of the deterrent effect that we might have when we combine all of these violations into one and then cap or limit the penalty that you can have for one violation and at the same time? And does at some point, does it cross or even become, I realize there's broader licensing problems that could happen to somebody who does this, but could there potentially be a financial incentive to now violate, as long as we do it real close in time and I'm going to be capped at a civil penalty of $20,000, that financially there's almost an incentive to take advantage? And I don't want to presume bad actors, but I also want to ensure that we are protecting against them.
Thank you so much for your question, Lake Martin, for the record. Yeah, absolutely. We want to be able to enforce, again, bad actors. Our industry needs to be safe. Our industry needs to be well-regulated and fairly enforced in order to be successful. And the good operators need enforcement against those who are not following the rules. So certainly there's an incentive to follow those rules. So the way that the regulation, the disciplinary system in regulation is set up is there are 5 categories of violations. And so when we're talking about $20,000 for one violation, typically in a complaint, you'll have multiple violations spanning those different categories. Category 1 being the most serious and going down to Category 5. So Category 1 might be, let's just say, selling to a minor inadvertently or selling to a minor, whereas a Category 5 might be a failure to keep good records, right? And so a violation, the maximum violation for one of those violations would be $20,000, but certainly the totality of the complaint could be more than $20,000, depending on the severity of the charges. What we were mostly seeking to target and have worked with the CCB to come to an agreement on the language related to those stacking is that if you are conducting an inspection and you do find, I'll use the plant tagging, right, 100 or 500 plants that are not tagged, that's usually because of like one mistake. But if it were every pre-roll over the course of several months is mislabeled, that's not one violation, right? Like even though it's the same problem, it can't be occurring over a long course of time. We're really trying to target that instance where there's a complaint out there right now with 10,000 violations, 10,000 violations of the same thing. And that's just, it's a little bit excessive, and it escalates the fines and penalties to a point where suspension or revocation are on the table because it's just so severe, where the actual violation itself might not be that severe. It's just there's so many in number that it seems like that you end up with 10,000 violations. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that explanation, because it helps me kind of understand a little bit better. And I was unaware of the different levels or categories of these violations. Might it be appropriate, for example, because what I really want to do is avoid the economic incentive to go ahead and take advantage of this, right? So, for example, you said Category 1, selling to underage person, right? Well, if I can, and honestly, I don't even know how much this stuff is going for now. But if I sell enough in a short period of time to underage minors and I can get away with it, I make more money than my civil penalty. What are the other potential consequences of that? Or should we maybe say, well, if it's a certain level, we might not want to necessarily combine them or stack them into one single violation?
Thank you for your question, Lake Martin, for the record. Suspension and revocation are always on the table. So even if the civil penalty was determined, $20,000, suspension or revocation, which is, a tremendously difficult penalty, are always on the table.
And Rochelle Wynn, for the record, I think that is the big elephant in the room, and that is the hammer. I mean, that is truly the hammer when you're talking about these kind of violations, that is part of the problem that we have right now. Sometimes people will say, why don't they challenge these? Why don't they go and fight these? Why don't they have a hearing? And most of these circumstances don't ever make it to that hearing thing because the power imbalance is so difficult. You have industries that have invested millions and millions of dollars just to get off the ground, and they're just not willing to risk even fighting 10,000 violations because it means losing their potential license. I think the one thing that we haven't talked about in this bill that is the most difficult thing about this to conceptualize is you will hear, and I'm sure Ms. Martin can talk about this, and being in a law enforcement background, this lawful industry is competing with a market that is potentially 50-60% of the market. So the illicit market isn't having to do anything to comply with this. They're not paying taxes. They're not putting money into the education fund. They are not they're not competing. They don't have to deal with time and effort billing. They don't have to deal with audits or inspections. And that is like a good 50 to 60%. And I've seen some statistics where it's like 70% black or gray market that these lawful industries are competing with. And so that's really where the competition, and that's where they're really losing out to. And so this is to give those people that are in compliance, that are trying to be strong business owners, that are trying to be compliant, are trying to put out a good product that is well regulated, that contributes to public safety, that they are not being penalized more so, and encouraging people to making it so unprofitable that people turn to this illicit market.
Chair, thank you for my final question, because I think you guys might have me there. So just to clarify, for example, the scenario where there's multiple violations of selling to underage minors in this short period of time that would theoretically be stacked into one under this, capped at $20,000 civil penalty. For that incident, that individual or those stacked incidents, one single incident could result in a revocation of the license, theoretically.
Lake Martin for the record, yes.
Thank you.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. The other thing that I would do is, you had talked about whether or not, the different levels of violations. Some of those regulatory and rulemaking things, I believe you guys passed out a bill. I think it was fairly unanimous, actually, and it was Senate Bill 328 that I co-sponsored with Senator Titus, and that put the CCB and their regulatory rulemaking into the Administrative Procedure Act. So in combination with this bill and that bill, we're really doing some things to bring more equity and fairness to this process and treat the cannabis industry more like the business industry.
Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblywoman Duran.
Thank you, and thank you for this fabulous bill. I was wondering on this, just like this, do any of these violations expire, or do they continue to stack? Is for example, after a year, they go away, or is it just continuously moving forward?
Thank you, Lake Martin, for the record. The timeline is 3 years. So they stay on essentially your record for 3 years, and the progressive discipline applies for any violations that occurred within the past 3 years.
So this would make this more of an incentive to do better, as well as or let me just maybe ask this. So does somebody come back to check to see or kind of help you with correcting your mistakes or your violations with training or anything like that?
Thank you, Lake Martin, for the record. Yes, and that's the goal, to encourage even more of that. But there are some of those compliance tools in place, plans of correction, where you have to, when you receive a notice of deficiency, you can tell the CCB, here's how I'm going to correct it, and they go ahead and approve it. And so there is an effort to make that happen and to correct those issues. So yes, I think that this does incentivize, and certainly the 3 years it incentivizes compliance. That's the entire goal of this bill, is to incentivize compliance and focus on education instead of punishment.
Discipline should be corrective before being punitive, in my opinion. Thank you.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. So we will start as soon as you ladies move to your seats to support testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 195? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes each.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. My name is Esther Badiata, spelled B-A-D-I-A-T-A, with Solid Consulting, representing Planet 13 Holdings, R&BW, and Hardin Premium Cannabis Dispensary. And I'd like to express our full support for SB 195. This bill makes important reforms that will promote regulatory predictability for legal licensees and refine the regulatory structure to one that is more clear and more equitable. We believe that these changes will encourage better compliance and continued growth for the cannabis businesses as we work together to stabilize this nascent cannabis industry in Nevada. We urge the committee's support for this bill, and thank you for the time to testify. Thank you.
Will Adler, for the record, representing Sierra Cannabis Coalition. Sierra Cannabis Coalition is in full support of Senate Bill 195. Thank you for hearing this. Please pass it.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola, members of the committee. Brett Scolari, Strategies 360, here on behalf of CPCM Holdings, Cura Cannabis Solutions, Green Marta, Nevada, and Clark Natural Medicinal Solutions. Wanted to urge your support on this bill. Appreciate Senator Wynn, all the sponsors, and the work that the Nevada Cannabis Association put into it. We think it strikes a really good balance between having fairness and predictability and fines and fees for the industry, and doesn't compromise the public safety or compliance nature of the regulatory system. So we urge your support and appreciate this hearing.
Scott Rutledge, Argentum Partners, for the record, here on behalf of Deep Roots Harvest and Green Life Productions, which I think you heard were mentioned in the NCA comments earlier. Thank you, Chairwoman Marzola and committee members for hearing this bill today. We are here in full support. I would say, as someone who's been working with Green Life Productions since they first issued that fine, it's not for a lack of compliance that those hours were billed, but so that the staff at the CCB could educate themselves and my client about a growing process, which they've been doing successfully for almost 8 years with a 99.5% pass rate. So obviously we were a little upset about paying these fines along the way, or not fines, but fees, to have conversations. And that's what the industry wants to do, by the by, is have conversations with the regulators so that we can all get better at this. Thank you again for your time.
My name is Aisha Goins, AESHA-GOINS. I'm here on behalf of Cannabis Equity and Inclusion Community. I want to thank the presenters and also Chair, thank you for listening to this bill. I think it's very important to point out how this will affect social equity applicants who will be coming into this industry. One of the most important things that I was afraid of is errors and omissions and how that would show up for those applicants and those licensees, and having this regulated and having it be consistent makes now this a sustainable license for those equity applicants. Also just want to point out that it's really scary to have young people with agent cards lose their whole career because of an error or errors and omission, because the results of that is the licensee, how they feel they have to resolve that is to fire that employee. So this offers another opportunity for that licensee to self-report and then that agent to be able to keep their job. So I urge you to support this, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Maratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is also in support of this bill, and we appreciate the bill sponsor efforts and the industry to ensure greater equity and fairness in the fee structure, specifically in Section 11, subsection 8. We think it's important that this language be added to ensure that there's oversight and regulatory control by this body to the state agency to ensure fairness in the business community with the way how fees and penalties are structured. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Chelsea Capurro here on behalf of the Nevada Cannabis Association. We are in full support of this. And just quickly to add on, the gentleman over there had let us know that we accidentally referenced an amendment. There is no amendment on this bill. We are working off the second reprint that you see, so no amendments to review. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 195? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 195, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, with the last 3 digits 153, you are unmuted and may begin.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Larson, Larsen. I'm an attorney with Black & Wadhams practicing in the regulatory arena, and I wanted to urge support for SB 195, specifically Section 3, which encourages self-reporting and eliminates what is essentially a penalty on self-reporting now. Support for Section 5, which would eliminate violation stacking, which again is a disincentive to self-reporting, and especially Section 11, subsection 6, which would eliminate the time and effort billing. I have seen situations where a one-day inspection results in hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of hours of time and effort billing being passed on to the licensee because the CCB record-keeping process essentially is chronological and not subject matter. And so in many instances, the agents will ask for the same documentation, the same information over and over and over, and bill their time for making that request and then reviewing the information, despite the fact that it previously been provided. So it's a inefficient system, and I applaud that provision of the bill to eliminate what is essentially a very punitive system in terms of passing on the cost of regulation to the licensees themselves. So I urge your support for Senate Bill 195.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 195. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone coming up. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 195? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 195, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 195? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 195? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tyler Klimas. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board, here to testify in neutral. Joining me to my left is Deputy Director Michael Miles. Also here with us is the Chair of the Cannabis Compliance Board, former Nevada Supreme Court Chief Justice Michael Douglas. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity here to have a couple minutes to talk about this bill and some of the provisions and narratives that have been represented here. I'm going to start with time and effort, Chair. I'm going to give an average, a number here for the committee. Out of the 240 entities in the cannabis industry, the average time and effort bill for a year is $5,614. 71% of licensed entities are billed less than $5,614 in time and effort total for the year. So if you are being billed more than $5,614, especially if you're being billed $47,000, as with one of the licensees that's represented, that's because CCB agents, auditors, have identified significant compliance issues. We don't bill for new employees that come on board with the CCB. If there's more than 2 people in a meeting, we only bill for 2. And it's important that we understand what we do and why we do it. The CCB didn't create time and effort billing. This is something that has been billed from licensees or billed of licensees from the medical days, back in 2014. This is a process that's been carried over to the Department of Taxation and now to the Cannabis Compliance Board. We have a line item in our revenue that says time and effort assessment. That line item has been approved by the legislature biennium after biennium. So moving on, we also talked about self-reporting.
Mr.
And the
Klimas,
pervasive nature of self-reporting. Yes.
if you can please wrap up your testimony. Your 2 minutes has expired.
Well, Chair, that's a little bit unfortunate. I mean, we don't have an opportunity here to refute or provide some testimony on what is said. So I guess with that, I will end my testimony. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 195?
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Michael Douglas. Last name is Douglas, D-O-U-G-L-A-S. I'm presently the chair of the Cannabis Compliance Board. I've been so since inception. I just want to set the record straight. I'm tired of hearing about paper towels. That was a stipulation between the parties other than more serious charges. They chose to say they violated that instead of something else. Stacking just tells the whole story. We've not taken a license. We have not used stacking to increase penalties, but just to tell the whole story. And you are only as good as the information you receive, so you have to see the whole picture. You cannot just see part of the picture. What I am truly concerned with, and hear me out please, is the time constraints you're now asking a part-time board to have to consider in this 30-day periods that is being requested that we operate in, and makes no allowance for regularly scheduled monthly meetings. So we're going to get a lot of things that we just deny because we can't get it done in the 30 days because we can't get a quorum to make a decision because those people have other jobs. So you're putting some undue hardship on the board. The board has been trying to work with the industry, but it is a privileged industry. They're not like any other business. And when you have people selling to minors, which we've had in cases, and the employer says they did it, which meant they weren't adequately supervising, it's kind of hard to take. We have not been ogres in doing what we're doing, and I realize they're a business. They wish to make a profit. I appreciate that, and we appreciate that for the education fund. But as a board and a board member, we take what we do seriously, and we look at what is there. Majority of the complaints we've had, the 2 years plus, have been complaints that were generated prior to CCB coming into effect that you, the legislature, put there. And these were settlements hashed out between the Attorney General's office.
Can you please wrap up your
Yes, ma'am.
testimony? Your 2 minutes has ended as well.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank
In
you.
essence, I would just ask that you take a look at the constraints that this puts on the board, a part-time board, to do what you're asking, so that you continue to get competent people in other parts of the industry who don't have an opt-out.
Thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas? Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in a neutral position? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone on the phones wishing to testify in neutral?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for Senate Bill 195, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. We will come back to Carson City. Are you wishing to testify in a neutral position?
Yes, thank you so much, Chairwoman. Rihanna Durrett for the record, RIANADURRETT. I serve as a board member on the Cannabis Compliance Board. I'm not here representing the board, but I have extensive experience in the industry. I've been serving on the board for 3 years. I teach cannabis law at the law school. I just wanted to make myself available in case there were any follow-up questions on how the board operates or how I see this bill working in practice. I think that the industry has been pretty reasonable in its approach and hasn't been overreaching or asked for drastic changes that could benefit them. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? Sure. Assemblywoman Backus has a question for you.
Mr. Grant, I do want to follow up on former Chief Justice Douglas's comments about concerns about complying with the new timeline set forth in Senate Bill 195. As a board member, and I get it, I mean, as an attorney, I get to appear before the Nevada State Contractors Board, but it's pretty regulated. It meets every month, and people work full-time there. And with dealing with this in the board, do you see it creating a hurdle? I mean, I just wanted to know a little more about that.
Rihanna Durrett for the record. So I believe what he was referencing is the correction, the 30-day timeline to approve plans of correction, and that's done by staff. So you don't need to convene the board. So I think that was just confusion. Does that sound correct? Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Members, any additional questions? I don't think so, but thank you so much for being here.
Madam Chair, if I may. in Las Vegas.
Okay, go ahead. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
For the record, Michael Douglas, Douglas. The time constraints, and except for a simple compliance, the way this is articulated, the board must approve within 30 days. It's no if, it's no may, it's no maybe. So additional time has to be taken to get a quorum of people together to do that, besides a monthly meeting, besides those of us who participate in other public hearings for the board and so on. And I'll stop. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time to respond to that question.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for still being there to answer the question. Assemblywoman, did that answer your question? Senator, would you like to come up and give any closing remarks? I did.
Ooh, 5 days left. Rochelle Wynn for the record. I am going to turn this over to Ms. Martin. I think she has some response to some of the questions that were asked of the passionate neutral.
Thank you, Lake Martin, for the record. Assemblywoman Backus, and I believe what the chair was referring to, because the only change that has a 30-day timeline is related to approving a plan of correction. Again, that's where a licensee has submitted a plan of correction, and what's happened is sometimes they don't receive a response in time. They'd like to move forward. They want to address the issue and make sure that that they don't remain out of compliance. So the plan of correction referenced in Section 3. We set the 30 days timeline, and at the chair's request, we did amend it in the first house to be clear that it was approved by the appropriate agent of the board. That's a staff member, and that's the language that they requested. Thank you.
And I didn't mean this if it came off this way, and I know that it has been taken this way, but I just want to clarify. The CCB has been acting at the direction and at the policy, the policy that we have put in place as a legislative body. So they are only enacting the things that we have asked them to do. I think in reviewing this, talking to people in the industry, talking to people outside of the industry, talking to people in law enforcement about the illicit market, trying to come up with solutions that make sense to solve this problem, it is incumbent on us to come back and address those issues, especially with a board that is so new in an industry that is so young. And so I would like to say that this is going to correct every single problem, and there's several other bills that are floating through this legislative body this session to kind of tighten up and look at what we instituted and what policies we, sought to impose on agencies like the Cannabis Compliance Board. And sometimes we get it wrong. And so we come here and we correct them every other year. And I imagine I will be back here in 2 more years if I'm so fortunate to be elected again. And we will be trying to correct some other problem as we're trying to fine tune this and get it into a place where it is good. If you look at even like gaming and you look at other regulatory boards, and I know that you guys have seen your a ton of licensing issues, people have come back session after session trying to fix things, everything from nursing compacts and physicians and other licensings and barbers and massage therapists. And so this is just one of those things that when we see a problem and we can fix it, we should come back here, and that's what this intends to affect. So I don't think that the Cannabis Compliance Board was operating nefariously. They were just doing what we directed them to, and I think we need to redirect them.
Thank you for your presentation. I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 195. 1 minute recess. Committee will come back to order. With the permission of Mr. Speaker, he has waived the 24-hour rule, and we are able to work session bills. At this time, I will be work sessioning Senate Bill 195, which provides provisions related to cannabis. Are there any questions, committee members, on this bill? And with that, I will take a motion to do pass Senate Bill 195. I have a first from Assemblywoman Torres, a second from Assemblywoman Duran. Is there any discussion on the motion? Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to echo Senator Wynn's comments that the board can only do what is prescribed in statute. But looking at the fix under Section 7, I have concerns about how it's written, because it says here that if the board does not take action to approve or reject the plan within 30 days, it's deemed by the agent of the board. So I think the words got a little mixed up in this, and so I could understand the chair of the CCB's concern. But we're not proud to myself on where commas go, but I will definitely vote this out of committee, but I would hope that maybe we could do a personal amendment to address those concerns.
Senator, would you like to address the issue?
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I'd happy to take a look at that. I will just echo what Ms. Martin said. This was language that was suggested by the chair and the board, and that's why it was included in that amendment. If it appears that they no longer like the language that they proposed, I will take a look at that again to bring better clarity to that situation.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Torres. Thank you, Senator. I will now open a hearing on Senate Bill 145, which revises provisions relating to employee misclassifications.
Thank you, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. I'm Roberta Lang. I'm representing Senate District 7 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 145, which continues the work of addressing employee misclassification in Nevada. I am pleased to be joined by Fran Almaraz and Randy Saltero, representing organized labor. In its simplest form, employee misclassification is a practice of classifying workers as independent contractors rather than employees. The misclassification can occur intentionally or unintentionally, but either way it can have serious legal and financial consequences for both the worker and the employer. Misclassification can result in workers being denied important protections and benefits that are only available to employees, such as overtime pay, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and certain job protections. This can lead to financial hardships and job insecurity for workers, as well as unfair competition for employers who are following the rules. I would like to do a short history of this bill, if I might, Chair. The 75th session of the Nevada Legislature approved Senate Concurrent Resolution 26, creating the Legislative Commission Subcommittee to study employee misclassification. The subcommittee was directed to determine the scope and problem of employee misclassification in Nevada, including 1, the implications, sorry, I can't get it out today, the implications and scope of economic losses for employees and lost revenues for the state and local governments. 2, proposals for state processes to identify employee misclassification. 3, potential penalties for employers engaging in employee misclassification. And 4, legal recourse for affected employees. As a result of this work, the subcommittee adopted several recommendations, including, among others, creating a task force to coordinate state efforts to reduce employee misclassification, providing the right for action for misclassified workers, implementing a graduated penalty against employers who misclassified their workers. Although it took some time, these recommendations from the subcommittee were enacted by the 80th session of the Nevada Legislature with the passage of Senate Bill 493, including the creation of a task force on employee misclassification. The measure before you today is Senate Bill 145, which incorporates several of the recommendations from the task force, and I've asked Randy Saltero to address these as he goes over the bill.
Chair Marzola, members of the committee, for the record, Randy Saltero. I just want to echo what Senator Lang has said. This is the culmination of work done by the Misclassification Task Force. This task force was made up by community partners, including business and labor. The parts of this bill that are significant here are, starting in Section 2, the offices of the Labor Commissioner, Division of Industrial Relations of the Department of Business and Industry, Employment Security Division of the Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, and the Department of Taxation and the Attorney General shall communicate with each other in efforts to coordinate communications when it comes to someone who or a business has been found to have misclassified, that they communicate that information with each other so that the proper agencies can address any issues that might have come from that finding of misclassification. Section 2, sub 2, it defines what employer misclassification is. And then further down in Section 3, sub 2A, for the first offense committed by the employer who misclassifies or otherwise fails to properly classify a person or employee of the employer, a warning is issued to the employer by the Labor Commissioner. Going down to next to B, for a second or subsequent offense, a fine of $5,000 for each employee who was willfully misclassified imposed by the Labor Commissioner. I say willfully with emphasis because that was something that was something that we, the stakeholders agreed that would be important, and I think you'll hear from folks that would be supporting this bill that that was something that was necessary to get this passed. With that, I will answer any questions. To my right also is Fran Alvarez, who is willing to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And does that conclude your presentation? Yes, ma'am. Perfect. Committee members, are there any questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Help me, educate me. This sounds very familiar. I think there was an issue over in California recently on Uber drivers versus the Uber service, that they wanted to be classified as employees and not 1099ers or independents. And I think it got settled in favor of the drivers, but my question is, so if that same thing was done over here and this misclassification study was done, that they were misclassified and that they are employees, would that be one group, one time penalty, or is that every single Uber driver? Very similar to almost what we were talking about earlier with the marijuana violations. Is it a one time or is it multiple times? And it may be worth the cost of doing business for the penalty, but I'm mainly interested in how would it be addressed if a company has multiple employees and they're misclassified. Is it each employee or is it that group considered?
Thank you for your question. Great question. My name is Fran Alvarez. The first offense, when someone is reported to the Labor Commissioner as misclassifying an employee, it is a warning. It is a warning for all of their employees that they are misclassifying. The second offense is for each employee. I hope that answers your question.
I think so, just to make sure I got it straight. The first time you got X people out there doing Y work, they get a warning that all that X should be considered something else. If they don't take all the X's into the new classification and they leave out 20 or 30, that's 20, 30 plus penalties then. If they only say moved, if the total number was 50 employees, they moved 30 into the new classification, then didn't for some reason do the other 20, that would be 20 penalties with the violations. Is that right?
For the record, Fran Alvarez, yes, it would be, Assemblyman.
Thank you, Chair.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Thank you, and thank you for this bill. I know there has been some issues concerning misclassifications. So my question is, most businesses have a list of their employees to know what jobs they do. So do most of these people that maybe misclassify them when doing it on purpose? Because I know, they should understand the job they're doing. If that's not, is there a possibility that it could be mistakenly done that way?
Thank you for the question. Again, my name is Fran Alvarez. Assemblywoman, when someone is reported to the Labor Commissioner as misclassifying employees, they are given a warning and they are given the parameters, the classification of what an employee is and what a independent contractor is. A lot of employees have legal independent contractors. So when they are given the warning that they are misclassifying, they are also given, the paper that tells them if you write them a check, if you tell them when to go to work, how to work, what time to get off work, what to do for each hour they're at work, those are employees. If they have a person working for them who can come and go as they wish, set their own hours, those are independent contractors. But if you control that person, they are an employee. Hope that answers your question.
So it's more of a job description that the employer should have for their employees of what they should be doing and what they'd be classified as, correct?
Yes, again, for the record, Fran Alvarez. And like I said, the first time when they are given their warning, they are also given the parameters of what an employee and what an independent contractor is.
Members, any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you for your presentation. We will move to testimony in support of Senate Bill 145. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, and I am the Executive Secretary-Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. And on behalf of over 150,000 members and 120 unions, we are in full support of this bill. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis, Communication Workers of America, Local 9413. We support the bill.
My name is Dakota Hoskins, Political Director for SEIU Local 1107. We support the bill as well.
Hi, my name is Sarah Collins, and I'm with the National Electrical Contractors Association, and we are in support of the bill.
Anyone else wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 145? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 145? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 145. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Ms. T. Grimmer representing the Nevada Resort Association. We just wanted to go on the record to let Senator Lang know how much we appreciate how much she worked with us on this bill and made the changes that we requested. And so we are okay with the bill now.
Good afternoon again, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Morak from the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is also neutral on SB 145. We appreciate the work that has been done with this bill sponsor to get us to this point, also address some of the drafting errors that occurred. And we appreciate all of her efforts to get us there today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 145? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Senator, would you like to give any final remarks? I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 145. 1 minute recess. Committee will come back to order. We will be work sessioning Senate Bill 145 today before we lose any more members. Senate Bill 145 revises provisions related to employee misqualifications. Is there any questions on Senate Bill 145, committee members? I don't see any. I will take a motion to do pass Senate Bill 145. I have a first from Assemblywoman Torres. I have a second from Assemblywoman Duran. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Duran. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 234, which revises provisions governing communications with offenders. Senator Scheibel, welcome. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Melanie Scheibel. I am the state senator for District 9, and I am only here because my name is on the bill, but it is not my bill. This is Max Greenstein's bill, and he is one of our fantastic youth legislators who I have helped along the way to craft this bill, to negotiate this bill, and come up with a finalized version that I think everybody could get on board with. It passed out of our House unanimously and does have the support of the Nevada Department of Corrections. I'm not sure if they'll be able to be here today or not, but I'm always happy to connect to you later if you need that. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Youth Legislator Greenstein.
Thank you so much, Senator Scheibel, for the introduction, and thank you, committee, for being willing to be here at such a busy time. My name is Max Greenstein, M-A-X-G-R-I-N-S-T-E-I-N for the record. Of course, given that it is the end of the session, I'm sure you all are very busy and have other things to do, so we'll both try and keep our remarks this afternoon on the relatively shorter side. But at the same time, I think that SB 234 is an important piece of legislation that endeavors to solve an important problem, so I appreciate Chair Marzola and the committee for giving us the opportunity to be here today. As Senator Scheibel mentioned, I am a rising senior at the Davidson Academy in Reno. Additionally, though today, actually May 31st, happens to be my last official day, I've also had the privilege over the last 2 years of representing Senate District 15 in the Nevada Youth Legislature. I first conceived of Senate Bill 234 actually as part of the Nevada Youth Legislature, and though it was not ultimately selected as the NYL's one statutory bill draft request, that went to Youth Legislator Thornton, who's here today, I reached out to Senator Scheibel, who was gracious enough to help me sponsor that independently. Essentially, in its current state, SB 234 proposes for women incarcerated at Florence McClure Correctional Center in Las Vegas to be granted 15 minutes of free phone calls each day to their loved ones. To give the committee a little bit of context, the bill's main impetus was observations that I've made over the past 2 years while I've worked as an intern at the Prison Journalism Project, which is a national media organization. The Prison Journalism Project trains and publishes incarcerated journalists, all with the end goal of helping to illuminate what we see as the murky world behind bars. And kind of as part of that context, and as part of that mission, we've published more than 600 incarcerated writers so far from over 35 states, including Nevada, I'll note. Something that our writers have consistently mentioned their stories is sort of what helped to inspire SB 234. And that's this. It's the observation that prison phone calls between the incarcerated and their families are vitally important for both groups, but that there are often significant structural barriers related to cost that stand in the way of reaping that full benefit. Indeed, it can cost families in Nevada hundreds of dollars, we might hear testimony about that later, to stay in contact with a loved one. And I'll just briefly note for the committee's knowledge that I've submitted a supplemental resource list, which is posted on Nellis, that includes various Prison Journalism Project stories written by our writers that kind of allude to this point. But with that kind of context behind us, moving into the more legislative, meaty section of this presentation, I think, as is the case with a lot of proposals that come to Carson City, the text and the provisions that you see today as part of SB 234 differ pretty significantly from our original bill draft request. Originally, we wanted the Department of Corrections to establish a pilot program to provide free calls between children and their parents who are incarcerated in Nevada, with the intent of sort of helping to preserve family bonds even across prison walls. Though over the past few months of the session, we sort of realized that while there is merit to this idea, perhaps even merit in the next legislative session if anyone's interested, it became clear that the department believed that there would be challenges in implementing this. So we've pivoted, and over 2 reprints, we've arrived at SB 234's current language to authorize the creation of a pilot program at Florence McClure to give the around 1,000 women who are incarcerated there currently 15 minutes of daily free calls. Now, I talk about this sort of in the language of compromise, though in many ways I see the current reprint as a marked improvement over the original language that was introduced back in the Senate in February or March. For example, the original language only authorized these calls to happen between children and their parents, but our second reprint now authorizes that between any family members and their parents, presumably which could include a son, a daughter, a spouse, a parent, etc., any family member. And sort of to that extent, I think it's important to recognize that SB 234 is a consensus bill. We've worked hard to bring together the perspectives of your colleagues here in Carson City, of the Nevada Department of Corrections, and of various community activists and stakeholders, all with the intent of drafting what we see as a responsible and thoughtful piece of legislation. Now, with your permission, Chair Marzola, I'd just like to briefly run the committee through the provisions of SB 234, especially after a recent reprint.
Please.
So it's a relatively short piece of legislation, the actual text of which is less than a page long, and it's divided into two sections. The first section establishes the intent behind the pilot program and basic facts in order for the department to kind of execute on the provisions established. The provisions say that the pilot program should be to benefit women incarcerated at Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center and their families, and then more broadly to help facilitate and encourage a continuing relationship. I'll note subsection 3 of section 1 is a very important clause, and it emphasizes that we're not changing any provisions for security reasons related to who can call and who can be called. If for whatever reason, a court order, a departmental regulation, etc., someone is currently barred from talking to their loved one, we're not changing that. And then moving into section 2, which establishes the intent behind this legislation as a pilot program, the Department of Corrections would be instructed to submit to the Board of State Prison Commissioners a report outlining the successes, the rooms for improvement, et cetera, of the pilot program, at which point on January 1st, 2025, the provisions would sunset and the next legislative session could make the determination if it wanted to make this pilot program more permanent. So, kind of with that level setting in mind, I'll spend the rest of the presentation addressing what I see as the most fundamental question when considering any piece of legislation, and that's very basically, why should you support SB 234? And I think on one hand, you should support it because there's an extensive body of academic literature that proves that prison phone calls have significant benefits for families, for offenders, and then for society as a whole. There are clear benefits to children, with one 2014 meta-analysis by Pullman et al. Finding that frequent phone calls between incarcerated people and their families, especially their children, were correlated with increased grades for those children at school and reduced behavioral problems. And then there are very significant benefits for society at large. One 2020 study by Haverkate and Wright, and I'll just emphasize for the committee that there's been a lot of academic research on this subject, noted that frequent contact with family members while incarcerated serves to reduce recidivism rates post-incarceration. And in that sense, I think the research is conclusive that by putting a little bit of effort now into the issue of incarcerated family relationships, we can set the state up for future success. But then, on the other hand, at an even more fundamental level, we think that you should support this bill very simply because it's about families. At the end of the day, this bill is about the family unit, and this bill is about strengthening family bonds and showing that even if loved ones are separated by prison walls, that the strongest bond in the world is still between families. If you choose to support this bill, either for the reasons that I have enumerated or for other reasons, you would be joining a broad group who have already done so. You'd be joining families from across the state, both the Clark County DA Office Juvenile Division and the Clark County Public Defender's Office, and other nonprofits and advocates such as the Nevada Fines and Fees Justice Center and Return Strong, who testified in support of SB 234 at our Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. You'd be joining the Department of Corrections, who I will emphasize has expressed that it can implement SB 234's provisions without cost to Nevada taxpayers, hence why there's no fiscal note on the bill in Nellis. And finally, you'd be joining your colleagues in the Senate who passed SB 234 out of their House unanimously last week. Each of these groups, though they come from very different perspectives, recognized SB 234's importance for parents, for spouses, and for children of incarcerated women, people who themselves have never broken any laws and have never done anything wrong, and who simply want to communicate affordably with their loved ones at Florence McClure Correctional Center. We would, of course, appreciate the committee's support, and I'm happy to help the committee answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Is at the end of the presentation. Well, thank you for being here with us today. You are an amazing presenter, and so you're definitely in the right path, and it is a very good bill. Committee members, are there any questions? Oh, there's nobody to my left. I don't see any questions, so I will move to testimony in support of Senate Bill 234. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Marzola and committee members. My name is Nicholas Shepak, S-H-E-P-A-C-K. I am the State Deputy Director of the Fines and Fees Justice Center, at least for now. I think Max may be gunning for that position any day. We are in strong support of this piece of legislation. The cost of incarceration in Nevada is one of the highest costs in the country. There is few places in the country that take more money from families to pay for things like phone and commissary. And this is just a small step but a very important step in moving in the right direction towards reducing that cost for families and incarcerated individuals. And we ask that you support this very thoughtful piece of legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stella Thornton, Youth Legislator Stella Thornton. I represent Senate District 16, and I am here in support of SB 234. Communication is a fundamental human need, and it plays a vital role in maintaining healthy relationships, even under the most challenging circumstances. Maintaining these connections during incarceration is not only important for the emotional well-being of the families involved, but also for the successful reintegration of offenders into society upon their release. Numerous studies have shown that regular communication with family members can significantly reduce recidivism rates. By enabling incarcerated women to stay connected with their families, SB 234 offers them a lifeline of support and hope. Furthermore, Section 1 of the bill requires the Department of Corrections to prepare and submit a report to the Board of State Prison Commissioners evaluating the participation of this program, and it ensures transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement in implementation of the program. In conclusion, SB 234 is a vital step towards promoting rehabilitation, reducing recidivism, and fostering the well-being of incarcerated individuals and their children. By providing free telephone calls between offenders and their families, this legislation recognizes the transformative power of communication and the importance of family support. I urge you to support this bill, and it will contribute to a more just and compassionate criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Puro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. As you can see, I think we'd all be in a better position, especially my office, if the youth legislators presented most of our bills. So they're really good. That being said, this bill is a critically important measure. How we treat people while they are incarcerated directly affects how they come out in society. And this bill will increase communication. As somebody who was in the service and was deployed, it was difficult not communicating with my family. But I'll tell you who it was really difficult for, the moms. And that's who this bill is directly going to help. The people in Florence McClure, the mothers, the sisters that are not with their families, that are missing their kids. This bill will directly contribute to increasing communication, which will put them in a much better position for when they are released, and we strongly urge your support. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 234? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. I'm Annette Dawson-Owens, serving with the Children's Advocacy Alliance as a School Readiness Policy Director and testifying in support of Senate Bill 234. We at the Children's Advocacy Alliance have had the unique opportunity to serve individuals who have been incarcerated here in Clark County, working weekly with programming and women in the prison system over the last 9 months. We have been sharing mental health and wellness tools with the goal of reducing recidivism and sharing skills that will strengthen individuals and families upon their release. Thus, we are in alignment with this bill. This bill provides hope and healing by fostering connectedness and communication, and will improve conditions for individuals, children, families, and our Nevada community as a whole. We need more of these practices that have proven success records and outcomes, as we have seen in states across the country. Thank you, Max, for your bill, for the sponsors and this committee for all you're doing and working on this session and advancing this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas with you? No, I don't think so. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support to Senate Bill 234?
Chair, there are no callers in support this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 234, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and member of the committee. This is Dora Martinez representing the Nevada Disability Pre-Action Coalition. Madam Chair, I'm really sorry. I was trying to call in time to support. May I please proceed?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I apologize. And thank you to to Max and the amazing Senator Melanie Shavel. We, like everybody else, people with disability sometimes get incarcerated. And we appreciate this bill because that will, it's a basic self-care. And isolation is never good for the mind, body, and soul. So we appreciate this bill, and we encourage you to please pass it. And thank you to the sponsors. Have a great day. Be safe and don't get struck by lightning.
Thank you for your testimony. We will go back to testimony in opposition. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will go to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 234? I don't see anyone. I still don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Senator, would you like to give any closing remarks?
Well, thank you so much for Max Greenstein, for the record, for the opportunity for SB 234 to be heard today. You know, I think at this point it's a little bit of a cliche for people to come and say that you should support their bill because it's straightforward. But if you'll indulge me, I really do think that this bill is straightforward. As you've heard, we have no opposition. The actual text of the bill is less than a page long, and the Department of Corrections, which is the entity that would be tasked with executing the provisions of SB 234, is A, in support, and has B, said that it can implement the provisions without any impact on Nevada taxpayers. So I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, and of course, we'd really appreciate having a work session scheduled on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you know that I'm not going to be able to work session it today because I've lost some members, but I can tell you that I am going to work session your bill. So at least you know that. And thank you again for being here today. I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 234. I will now open up for public comment. Please address any remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment? I don't see anyone in Las Vegas either. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. And with that, our meeting is adjourned for today. Thank you.